Hey, did you know that Two Girls Shooting the Shit is on Instagram and Facebook? We'd love to hear your feedback, episode suggestions, or just chat with you about life. So follow, comment, and share.
Now, as a parent, and part of that responsibility is knowing when to delegate some of that responsibility. So, as a parent, you take your kid to the dentist, you take them to the doctor, right? The professional. And they give you instructions, they give you prescriptions, and ultimately it's up to you to make that happen. It's similar to education. It's like it is your responsibility. And you delegate a lot of that to professionals. You bring them to school, you make that choice. Because you could really homeschool them.
Hey, what's up?
Hey Mo. Hey ladies.
Welcome. Today we have some special guests. We have Kaili and Cindy, who are going to be talking to us about our great American education system. And by the way, happy National Teacher Appreciation Week. That should be every day. So we'll start off with you. Kaylee, you want to give us a brief intro?
Well, I'm Miss Kaylee at my school, but you don't have to call me that.
Miss Kaylee.
And I actually am teaching in California. I'm a therapeutic special education teacher, which means that I primarily teach students with emotional disturbance. And I moved here from New York City.
Hey.
Oh, wow.
In the house. Glad to have you. Cindy.
I am not Miss Cindy to my students.
Who are you to the students?
I've been a special educator for 13 years for the NYC DOE. It's been quite the ride, you guys.
I bet.
Right now I teach algebra and English language arts, but for some time I taught 4 subjects at a time, the way that an elementary school teacher would.
Wow.
I don't even want to know how you did that. And Cindy and I know each other because those 13 years ago. Gosh, that sounds like forever ago. We'll cut that
Actually,
out.
now, you know what? Now I'm like, oh my God, that's 14 years ago.
Yeah, the teaching fellows. So we did the teaching fellows together and you stuck with it. So what was it about the teaching program that you had that? I mean, I really appreciate it. I think I wasn't ready. I wasn't at a stage in my life to stick with it. And I wasn't at the right school either, which all are very important when you're someone who is studying to be a teacher and a teacher at the same time. So what was it about your experience that kept you in it for all of this time?
I think some of it was luck in that my first school, although not as supportive as they could have been, maybe not all their fault. I think part of it was just it was a great neighborhood. It was an immigrant community, and I find that immigrant parents are just super supportive of educators. I think it was a bit of luck, and I think the other part was just I had a psychology background, and I think a lot of that was just I was able to self-reflect. I was able to center myself, and I recognized when I was being emotionally tested. And I think that there's not enough of that. So I think, you saying I wasn't in the right school, I wasn't ready, I think there wasn't enough to help us get ready.
Very true. And like you said, I didn't have the self-reflection that to be able to say, okay, well, this is what I need to do. But I did learn those behavioral, like that teaching was more about managing people than actually teaching a subject, which was very shocking to me. So how has it been like teaching in this pandemic?
Oh, I was going to say, Kaylee,
Well, every day is certainly an adventure. And I think just the motivation to get out of bed every day. I mean, many people are working from home, and I don't know, honestly, I'm pretty impressed by that because I don't know how you guys do it, because I have to go somewhere and I have to be there for the kids. And I think that's helped me become more motivated to get up every day in a pandemic. But it has been an eye-opening experience. As I feel so terrible for the families that this has really affected. And at the same time, I see it on the other end too. And these kids are really battling something that's really never been seen before, at least in our lifetime. It shows a lot of resilience, and it shows, I think, the best thing, it's like they don't even know how to be social anymore. I mean, now all the kids are back. Before it was just, special ed students, but it's funny that it's almost like they're navigating this new way of life too. And to see them do that, it makes me be, obviously, like Cindy said, more reflective for yourself. And I think that's what a good teacher should be like. I mean, I'm not always that way. I always tell the kids I'm a learner first and then a teacher.
That sounds like a good teacher. That sounds like something a good teacher would say. What about you,
I like
Cindy?
that, Kaylee. Can I steal that, Kaylee? I like it.
Of course, beg, borrow, steal. That's what one of my favorite professors said. He was like, I don't know why anybody thinks they need to give something back in the teaching world. We're not giving anything back. We're taking it and we're using it, and we're going to use it the best way that we know how to use it. So take it.
I found that in the beginning of this pandemic, a lot of kids thrive through remote learning. I think it was just the class that I had, or the classes that I had. A lot of them had social anxiety. A lot of them hated raising their hand in class. They did prefer the activities, as rare as they were, that just involved them being in front of a computer. And so what I found interesting was the kid that was quiet became super involved, participated, even unmuted. So from March to June of last year, I wasn't struggling. My school was also great about supporting us technologically. We were already on Google Classroom. We were using it well. It was a smooth transition. And then September came. And I think kids learned how to get away with things. And then it became more of a battle to get them to pay attention. And so I think my experience from the height of it to now has changed significantly. They've evolved.
How so?
So they figured out, hey, this Google Classroom that they're using, we can chat on it on the side. And then we were like, oh my God, we have to disable that. And then it was, oh, hey, there's this call option. So they were prank calling people in class while on Google Meets. And then we were like, we have to disable that immediately. So it was us, like, with the breadcrumbs afterwards, sort of sweeping them up. Like, oh my goodness, we have to figure out everything that they already figured out. We have to disable it. So it became an adventure afterward. In the beginning, I actually thought that we kind of helped each other get through it together via Zoom, via Google Meet.
Nice. So then they figured out how to hack the system. And what happened after you disabled everything? How are they today?
So now they switched over to online gaming with one another during class, and I could tell because I could see that their two fingers are in just the same buttons. It's like the down key and the shift key. And I'm like, John, I know you're not typing because your fingers on two buttons, and that's it.
Remember HITS, high impact teaching strategies. Clap once if you hear me.
Oh my God.
How do you do that kind of stuff in Zoom? Like, how does that work? Or do
like, Kaylee, did you do that? Did you do HIT? Like, what impact strategy do we use today? No, now I have to create separate chats, and I have to reach out to them individually almost. It's super challenging that way. So when they're involved and they're into it, it's awesome. I actually think that I'm going to take some aspects of remote teaching into the classroom should it open up again.
Should it open
up? The fascinating part about it all is that you realize how smart your students are. Like they're brilliant. I mean, they can be brilliant manipulators in the same sentence that they can be brilliant at navigating through a system that we never thought we would ever use with them because of either their, grade level or age or capabilities. And then you're like, wait a minute now. And you think, oh, not only are they clever, I got to be two steps ahead of them. So I think it just really tested us all to kind of all persevere at the same time, even though we were all, the exhaustion level was so impacting because there were days where I thought, is this real life? Like you wear your mask all day, or you go out, you see all these people in masks, and like, we've never lived that way before. And you're like, this is a movie. Is it the apocalypse? Like you're just like, this is not happening, but it really is. And you are reaching within yourself to keep going day after day. And that's exactly what these kids have had to do. And even though they're resilient, the pushback was pretty big and still is, because things aren't quite back to what we've been used to before. But I
What's
think what Cindy was
pushback?
saying is, well, do you want to know about, student behaviors? Because I've got plenty.
When you said the pushback was
Um,
really big, what do you mean?
I think one, the pushback from families, from parents, that it was very hard. I mean, everybody was scared. Nobody knew what was going on. Nobody knew if they were going to get COVID. Kids keeping on a mask all day when they came back to campus, and even before that, when like Cindy was saying, like trying to get them on, you see the ones that thrive, and you're like, yes, wow, who knew that they were going to like really take off, and then you see it dwindle, because to be honest, I think everybody it was a novelty at first. It was something to experience all at the same time. You get tech. I mean, my students earn tech at the end of the day. Like, they have to be on a certain level to be able to play on their video games and whatnot. And so giving it to them all day was this sense of freedom and trust. I think they were so bewildered by the trust we were giving them that they were so impressive at the beginning, but then that wears off, right? Just like many things will wear off, And so I think that was the thing, trying to be like, all right, now which direction are we going to go in? And once that happened, then you start seeing the behaviors. And for example, I mean, I work with a very special population. And so those behaviors came right back. And it was, this kid is in my space. And I'm like, oh yeah, we have all these spaces now. I'm taping off areas and classrooms. And it was like siblings all at once, fighting for their area. And it's like, whoa, 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 just stay in your area. And then the behaviors become more and more dysregulated. And then you start seeing, the things that you saw before pandemic, which are, chairs being thrown, desks turned over,
Oh, wow.
windows shattering. I've seen more things than I ever thought I would see, but I've also seen students trying to just push through the world and hope that the people around them understand that they have an extra layer that they have to, go through and break all at once, because they are battling something internally that most kids don't have to do. I've had kids say to me, I just want to be like a normal kid, which breaks
Oh,
your heart. I've had kids say, they just don't understand what I go through. I tried to use that strategy. It just wasn't working for me. And, they're so honest. And that's when you realize, like, everything that you do is a way to try to help somebody just go along in the world. Yeah, it's a challenging job, but at least that's the respite that I have. It's that every day we go out in the world and we just try. And if we survive and get to go to bed in our beds at night, then that's one less day we have to fight for the next day. So it has been definitely a challenging moment, because everything was exasperated. Every behavior was exasperated, because it's like, okay, now we have to deal with like these kids pulling masks off to want to hit us, and they're, and the times that they are very emotionally dysregulated. And it's like, I never thought I was going to be like, oh, I need to get my mask on. And then I'm like, you're just like, forget it. It's not worth it. So yeah, some days it's like, well, forget the mask. I just want to make sure this kid is safe.
Yeah. And
yeah.
you are safe. You said people, throwing things and things like that. And you're in
Mhm.
person, Cindy. It sounds like you're remote. So how are you all handling that? Like, what support systems are in place for you as far as teaching and dealing with these behavioral changes or technological changes? How has the support system been for you?
I mean, I'm in person now. September came, it was upsetting, coming in. Actually work in an affluent area. What I found interesting about working in an affluent area during the pandemic was sort of the entitlement. A lot of the students actually came in saying like, well, this isn't really real, right? Like, we're not really going through a pandemic. When we started getting tested about, the random testing starting September, the New York City numbers started to rise. We rose, and the teachers were watching the numbers. We rose, like we were 3%, 5% infection rate. And then our union was like, at some point, you gotta shut schools down when we get to a certain level, right? What's the X percent? So then we went up to 9%. So then around Thanksgiving, so starting September, Thanksgiving shut down until February. We come back, and if there's 2 infection rates in the building, we got to shut down again. So we were, open, shut down, open, shut down. We were open and closed. I mean, every other week. It was like a joke. We were like, we got to take our tech home with us every day because we don't know if we're going to shut down. And the answer to that was, how do we stop the shutdown? Change the criteria. So now we're not going to wait for 2 kids to get sick. We're going to wait for 4. And you got to prove that the sickness came from the building. That's which is impossible.
Yeah.
So now we're not going to shut down. I'm not as worried as I am anymore. It's just that I think because of the area that I'm in and my school is doing as much as they can. I don't think the Department of Education is doing as much as they can. I think the school is. I think that's their MO, right? Like, we're going to give you a rubric and figure it out.
Wow. So it's each school for itself.
Yeah. So now we're in school 5 days a week, and we'll be until June.
Wow.
We'll tell you how that goes.
There's a funny meme that is like, in 2020, parents were like, I don't want my kid going back to school. And then in 2021, they're like, take my kid. Emily, you're a parent. So what's your experience been during this pandemic as a parent of a school-age child?
It's interesting to hear the teacher's perspective. My daughter's in 2nd grade. We're in a pretty affluent area as well. And so when school closed the end of last year, it was great. It did seem like a novelty, like, oh, we're home. We did she's in 2nd grade. So they did I think they used Seesaw was the platform. And so all of her assignments, all of her stuff would be posted 8 o'clock in the morning. There'd be a quick Zoom with the teacher, and she was fantastic. And she would just kind of plow through her work. She's a very focused, very smart little girl, very independent. And she just did everything and was done by 12. And then so she had the rest of the day to read or play or do whatever. And then when the fall came, it was more structured, and every block was Zoom. So it was like you had a full school day because you have to get the certain, the number of hours in. And I think that would have been difficult had we not formed a pod. And I think that's something that a lot of people have done. Her best friend's mom is a friend of mine. And so we decided, hey, she's got a lot of space, just had 8 kids that met every day. And so they were able to play at recess, lunch, and have that social interaction. And then we just weren't able to socialize with anybody else outside of those families that were in the pod. So that was our social group too. And so that kind of solved the problem of forgetting how to be with people. And they have little siblings and all of that type of thing. They went back to school early April in person, like a hybrid schedule, which I didn't understand. Our school district had a ton of meetings that you could watch and listen in on with lots of voting, and people were really, really, I was shocked at how candid they were in the chat section. And you can see their names and you can see these horrible comments they were making, accusing the schools of being lazy, not wanting to open up. This private school here is open. Why can't you do it? All kinds of stuff. And it was just can you just hear, nobody knows what we're doing. This is new, so we're just trying to figure out the best way to do it, keep our kids safe, keep our teachers safe, keep our community safe. And so I don't know, I'm just going with the flow, I'm kind of chalking it up as a lost year. She's learned quite a bit, but I feel like they haven't learned as much as they could have had things been normal. I feel for the kindergartners and the, first, second, the young ones who are just getting acclimated to what school is like. More than academically, I'm concerned about their emotional well-being, because I know that a lot of the kids through that pod, I mean, they're very clingy to each other now, which is kind of sad, kind of scary, but they're their own little crew, their own little, they have a security with each other, even though they're on campus again. So I don't know. It's hard to navigate as a parent, trying to make sure the academics are taken care of and then the emotional is taken care of. And then not even to mention the physical, because there's been some physical tolls for our kids too. Weight gain for a lot of kids. I know my daughter had her physical, and our doctor was commenting on how much she was concerned about all of her patients in general. that they aren't getting the amount of outside time that they normally would get, or playing sports or things like that. And my daughter wears glasses, and being on the computer all day, her eyes got really bad in a year. So she got referred for some, special testing and stuff. But so that's another concern is just, eye issues. I'm rambling, but yeah, there's a lot of concerns for parents. I've just been trying to give as much grace as I can to everybody. We're all trying to navigate this together, and we're all thinking of the kids. So I don't know, the people who want to point fingers, it's just kind of for what, So that's my piece.
Yeah.
I want to highlight something that M said, where, she was like, just giving people grace, because I think that's the thing. It's, I am a school teacher, and I have tried out kind of every school format I can. I worked in a laboratory school, a parochial school, a private school, a public school, a charter school in my 15 years of teaching. And they all have pros and cons, right? But I think the overarching thing there is that school for kids is important. Some days I wonder, like, how well I do at my job, or if I'm the right person for these students, or if I should even be a teacher. But I think one thing that has happened in this last year is that we realize that a school for kids, a place for kids to go, is important, because they do get a lot of their needs met there. And it is a good place for so many of their developing skills to happen. More so than not, the families are very grateful. And I didn't realize that always. So, you're not always getting accolades on emails. Some emails are like very direct. Some emails or communication is like, I upset about something. Some are like really shining a light on you. But I think what I've noticed is that families are like, thank you. There's gratitude now, where, not that there wasn't before, but it's a different kind. You see a dad's eyes, and they meet yours, and they're like, thank you. Thank you for, thank you for having my student in your class right now.
They're like, oh my God, I didn't know what it was like dealing with my own child.
Exactly.
It did. Yeah.
Exactly.
It gave them this little opening of like, if I had my child all day long, every single day, this is what it would look like. And then I think they realize a teacher wears many hats, just like a parent does, right? A parent, I mean, you're the nurse, the doctor, you're so many things. The parents, the friends, sometimes the cook. You got a lot of roles. and then teachers do too. They wear all these little hats that are like, I mean, I never knew I was going to be, an IT. Computer science is not my thing, but apparently it is now, because I had to learn so much about Google and using, technology to help kids learn, that I was like, well, I guess this can go on my resume. But I think that is the thing. It's like, gratitude is one thing that I'm trying to walk away from this with, is not just, seeking gratitude from anyone, because I mean, I get paid for my job, right? Parents don't get paid for their job. Kind of spreading that wealth a little bit, because I realize I am grateful for parents for communicating with me, and that I'm so grateful I have a roof over my head, and that these kids had the Chromebooks that they were able to use. And there are so many people out in this world that don't have things that I was able to use during a pandemic. And I continually think about that. And there were kids that weren't as lucky as the students that I teach, that are struggling in the world. And I think my heart got a little bigger, because I saw things in a different way. And, then I was like, okay, I think I can do this teaching thing for, until June.
Do you think that this pandemic has highlighted the disparity in education amongst different communities? Because I feel like our students got Chromebooks. They were just like issued out. Here, we're doing this. Here's your Chromebook. You can do your remote stuff. And I know that that's not the case everywhere, obviously. And I also know that not everybody has reliable internet or a safe place where they can sit quietly and learn. So I do kind of like what you're saying, Kaili. I wonder about those kids who probably got lost in all of this, and what happens to them.
Yeah. And I think it actually, it made it go to an even, larger scale, right? It wasn't just, that, some kids out there don't have these resources. It was like, wow, they're not getting vaccinations in these areas. They're not, it kind of highlighted a lot of things, in our society, and well, we need to work on that for sure.
Absolutely, definitely highlighted what were the holes or the gaps in the education system. For one, as you mentioned, kids having just private time. Usually people, growing up in the city myself, your home was like a hotel, right? It was where you slept. It was where you ate. And then it became the place that people had to stay. Certain people that had households of, 2-bedroom, 9 people living in it. It didn't matter how many students were residing there. Where are you going to find space to be alone? And it wasn't until later, right? Like companies like Google figured out, like, these platforms were not designed for students, for teachers. They were designed for meetings, for business people. And they hit the ground running and quickly were like, we got to fix this, right? Mm-hmm. So they rolled out later, but we're still grateful that they rolled it out, like the changing of the background in Google Meet. Oh, you can blur your background now. Oh, you can only students get access to X amount of stuff, all the stuff we were disabling before. I think depending on where you were from, sort of painted a better picture of the experience that you had. So I think in the more affluent areas, you had a little bit of a better experience. But I think if you ask, the people in the affluent areas will still have more complaints than students not in the better areas. Even though they had it pretty good, considering a global pandemic.
It's so funny you mentioned that, because earlier you said something about immigrant families trusting the schools or working with the teachers and everything, and for
supporting
me,
education.
Yeah. For me, I felt differently when I taught, because I also taught in an immigrant community, and I felt that while they did trust and support, I felt like they didn't have a sense of agency. Like, they just trusted whatever the school said. That's the authority. What you say is right. And so I kind of wish that they would push back more, like the more affluent. Well, not to say immigrant doesn't mean affluent, but I was in the inner city, so it wasn't an affluent community. I feel like they do need to push back, because I feel like that's a gap, and that sometimes people can get over, because it's just like, okay, whatever you say is right. And what if it's not? There's no one there to check them. So that was something I remember back in the day that concerned me.
Yeah, it's a lack of experience of being through through the school system, really, or through a school system like this. I think that you're right in that they aren't as knowledgeable of what their rights are. So they are more trusting. But in a system where beginner teachers really don't survive, I don't even know what the statistic is now of how many teachers quit within their first 5 years. So the people that are in front of your child that are veterans, they have to know what they're doing. They've been vetted and they've been tested so many times. They can be trusted. Especially so if someone tells you, hey, I've been teaching 7 years, that is 70 years. I mean, teaching years are dog years, right?
Yeah.
1,000%.
Right? Are they finally, like, I remember back in the day, they were trying to make sure that teachers were paid appropriately. Do you feel like that's been improved over time? Do you feel like you're properly compensated for the work that you're doing?
Kaili, you want to take this one?
If I were making what I make in California, in North Dakota, I feel like life could, I would be still paying on student loans, because I don't know when those are going to be ending, but I might be able to afford an apartment on my own. But yeah, no, especially like, I don't get hazard pay. I'm on a regular teacher salary. Like any other general education teacher, it's just based on my years and how much schooling I've had. Some days I feel like I don't know why I'm not paid $1 million a day. And some days I'm like, all right, today was pretty easy. So guess I make what I make.
And that's how I describe it. It's a lot like an unhealthy relationship.
Yes.
You're like, I'm so appreciative of what I get, but also it really kicks me.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, but I should be grateful because of the benefits. But also, I worked 5 more hours than I was paid to yesterday. But that's okay because they made a sign outside that said, we appreciate you.
Cindy nailed it.
So it's okay.
It's like, ooh, how many tutoring hours do I need this week? Like, how much extra work do I need to do?
What are your schools doing for teachers appreciation? Are they doing, I mean, does it matter? Like, I mean, I'm sure it matters to hear and to get some appreciation, because I feel like for a lot of it, almost like parenting, like it's a thankless job. It's just kind of like, here, take our kids for the day. At the end of the year, we'll give you a present or say thank you, but usually that's not like a daily appreciation. So like, are the schools doing anything special for you guys, the students? Especially in light of the special circumstances over the past year? Like, has there been any attempt to show gratitude to you guys, especially since you guys are back on campus now? Is there anything different at your schools?
I think our PTA is putting together like a socially distanced luncheon, maybe. I'm not sure how logistically, I was on the task force for when our school was going back in person last summer. And logistically, that was a nightmare, and still really kind of is, but we're making it work. You know what? I always have Tim Gunn in my head. Make it work, designers. Good luck. So it is kind of like, you know, being a clothing designer. Like, some things look good and some don't. Some things fit and some don't. So yeah, I think, you know, they're trying to get something together just to show some of that appreciation, but at the same time, like, I can't always participate in those things. I mean, it depends on what one of my students is doing. And if they're having a crisis, I'm not at that luncheon.
Yeah.
So I think that it's the thought that matters and counts. And so, you know, I just want people deserve some accolades. So I just hope people feel that they're supported and that they're, you know, loved and thanked. Right.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say, I'm grateful and fortunate to be in an amazing school. So, I mean, even with my struggles, that's at a great school. Like, I'm struggling, but still at a great school. They gave us food today. It was just really nice to go in and get some food the PTA put together for us. We got like $10 Amazon gift cards. They made a video where each teacher got a thank you and you're awesome from a kid. Yep. And that's cool. Fantastic. I was like, oh man, this job is getting tough, but man, I love this school.
I think that's also kind of like what can drive me to want to go back to work the next day after a hard day. It's like the people I work with. I mean, most of them are my friends, like good friends. And I am so thankful for the team that I have because they are phenomenal. And again, made friends with them. So now I do things, you know, I think we can all kind of laugh sometimes about just the craziness of what can happen in a classroom. And so it just gives you that motivation to be able to return some days after a hard day. I am blessed to work with the people I do. And then you realize, like, oh my gosh, like, you know, you thought you were like, all right, I got a couple masters, like, cool. And then you meet these teachers that come into your school, you know, and you realize, oh my gosh, they are smart. Like, these people don't have Harvard educations, but they are so brilliant and knowledgeable. It's incredible. And that's why I think it's so cool to work with so many different, I mean, there are some teachers, you know, that excel in math and some, you know, some in STEM. And so it's really cool also to see all these multi-talented people in one place of work. And I think that's really cool.
Kaili, don't you think the camaraderie between teachers is just the closest, most awesome kind of bond that can exist between coworkers? Because it's almost like we're like, man, did you see that back there? We just do that together.
I feel like most corporations should actually hire teachers to come in and to do like social emotional programs and to like do morale boosting, because we are hype people. Like, we can make things happen. And we like to have fun too.
We go in an auditorium with no microphone and we're like, are you ready to learn?
Exactly.
What were you like, Mo, in the classroom? I mean, you're so chill as a person that I'm like, man, you're your own hype person, but like in a meditative way. Like, you guys ready to learn?
Me? Oh my God.
You guys know a different Mo then.
Yeah, I was like, I was nervous. I was too nervous to be a teacher. You know, they can feel that. Luckily, I did, at the time it was called, I don't know what it's called now, inclusion. It was called like collaborative team teaching. So there were two teachers. So I was a special education teacher, and then I taught with a content teacher. And so I taught every subject, like you mentioned, Cindy. And it was really those hits, walking around the classroom, eye contact, reward systems, rules, things like that. And yeah, I don't know, those foundational things they taught us really helped, because you could just, like they said, it sounds so silly, but to be able to point to the rule and be like, okay, you agreed to this. We made these up in the beginning of the school year. You made these rules. You know, it's like a kind of thing where, you know,
you did this. You did this.
These are the rules you decided on, kids. But yeah, having that support of a co-teacher, even sometimes I didn't. But yeah, it was interesting. There's a tape somewhere, because we had to do that session for our certificate or whatever. Woo, I gotta find that. That was, oh, like I said, I feel like looking back, it was more the adults versus the kids. The kids were actually great. Like, I was scared at first, but they're kids, and I think that's what they're just there to learn or socialize with their friends. But yeah, I think I just had I don't know if I was chill, but I definitely wasn't intimidating or anything like that. They could talk to me without a problem. Some kids didn't like it because our class was stigmatized, because it was a collaborative team teaching class and the kids didn't move. The teachers came into the classroom. They felt stigmatized. So just helping them feel supported and proud to be in the class was hard to do. And I worked with two teachers, because the first teacher was like, I'm out of here. And then after the first year, and then the second teacher was,
wait, what? Your co-teacher quit?
No. My co-teacher left at the end of the year. So it was like, we had a full year.
Okay. Oh, okay. I see.
But yeah, the person who was supposed to be my co-teacher never even came. So that was a different story. But the co-teacher the following year was great, because she was also an immigrant and like of the same community, and she's like a mother figure. The kids really loved that, and so the dynamic was great. And like I said, looking back, I mean, I'm still a licensed teacher, at least until August. And looking back, people would be like, "You're a good teacher," and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I think if I would be myself now, like having that confidence and that self-esteem and agency, I'd be a completely different teacher. Not that I want to do it, but you know, reflecting on it, I feel like I would. Something that I was going to ask that we had back in the day was per session. So it was an opportunity for you as a teacher to get more, basically do extra work and get compensated for it. So it sounds like that's been taken away based on what you've all said, and that you're just working extra without any compensation. Is that
During
the case?
the pandemic, we are, but I must admit, before the pandemic, after doing this for a few years, I'm like, you can keep it. You want to take away my sixth period and give me an extra 40, but you can keep it. Nope, I want my free time.
That's true, though. Time is very important. So what are you all doing to support yourselves? And then I would love to hear from Cindy and Kaili, and then also Emily, like as a mom and as for your children, like how are they supported emotionally and self-care and all of that? Like, how are you supporting yourself with your mental health and your self-care?
Well, I come to visit you, Mo. So traveling,
Come back.
I guess. And I will this summer. Hiking. I am an outdoorsy person, so my weekends I'm out. I do exercising, hiking. I kind of have a lot of energy, so I got to get it out somehow.
Yeah, it was hard for me in the beginning of the pandemic. I think I was in a good place before. I was kickboxing regularly, and I kind of had stuff figured out. And then I just went to a really bad patch. You know, I even reevaluated relationships, because then it was like, well, who's willing to keep in touch with you? And there was so much going on that it was really nice to just log on and be like, hi, kids. you have to Zoom with me. And then later it turned into me being forced to find habits. So I started writing. I started writing creatively, and I'm still doing it. And I joined 2 writing groups, and we meet every 2 weeks. That's been quite the therapy, and that's been quite a beautiful thing. And just learning new things, right? Signing up to get scuba certified.
Scuba, oh, nice.
Why not?
Because that's what one does. I think there could be more to help parents and teachers decompress from the responsibility of raising humans, because we are the village.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's
dream.
a concept. That's a concept that really was revisited or brought back to life a little bit with this pandemic, is that if you have a 2-parent household, both people working and multiple children, there's an education piece now that parents have to help facilitate because it's all distance, or it was all distance. And so I think it's an understanding that, hey, maybe we can't do this alone. And that's what kind of prompted the families here to create a pod, because my daughter's best friend's mom is an aide in special education, and the schools were closed. And so they had the teachers, but the aides didn't have to go back in for some reason. So she was like, she has a little bit of a background, and she's, familiar with education. So she brought everybody into her home for this pod type thing. So I think that, the idea of the village needs to be more prevalent. I feel like we've run away from that or come away from that. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to do alone. Yeah, you have to have people you can rely on.
I applaud you for the pod idea. My God, that's a great idea.
It was. I mean, a lot of people in this area, there were several pods, and it was kind of like competitive almost.
Oh God,
like just like
gang wars.
Like I want my kid in with that pod, because I don't know. I just moved here, and so I'm still trying to get acclimated to like the social structure of this. I'm like real chill. It's a new world for me.
But I think you made a good point, because I feel like there was a lot of finger pointing going on. It's like, if a student is not necessarily thriving in the way that you hope them to, or they're struggling with something, or they're being challenged by something, the pointing of who's in charge of this, and why isn't it being fixed? And I'm like, well, one, because children are not vases. We're not dealing with broken vases. Like, I can use some super glue for that. We got to look at the whole picture. And I think that's you saying like it's a village makes sense, because what I've seen before, it's politicians pointing fingers and like, well, we're not giving you this funding because like there's other things in the world that need more, administrators or teachers pointing back, or even kids pointing, and it felt very disconnected. It felt like we were all kind of running away from, the target, like is this student, right? And we're all running in a different direction away from them. I'm like, what? The whole point is that we're actually, it's like, going inside the parachute at PE, like everybody goes inside of it and then we come out of it and go in, it should be more like that, where we help a student when they really need it. And that's when we're going inside that parachute all together as a village, and then giving them a little breathing room because we see how well they're doing and they're growing and they're thriving. And then, there's a problem. We better go back inside again. And because you can't go inside that parachute if there's only 2 people going up and down with it. That's not going to work. The parachute's just going to kind of go down on the ground in your PE class. You need that whole entire group to be able to go around it and lift it up when needed. And then, so I mean, not that was the best example, but I
was with you
in a school day, right? Like I'm like, oh, gee. But I think that's a thing that's really big right now, is like, it does take a village.
I really like that analogy, Kaili, because I remember telling people, parents that were like, we're homeschooling our kid, we should just have half your salary since we're doing, the work. And I'm like, when you come up with a lesson plan, maybe.
I hated when I would hear that. I really hated that, because you're facilitating. Okay. You're helping to get the Zoom or the Google, whatever up, and hey, do you need a pencil? Like whatever it is that, but you're not teaching them. Like you're doing what you should be doing as a parent anyways. Hey, your kid doesn't understand something. Okay, well, let me help explain it, and help you understand it. But you're not creating a lesson plan. You're not actually instructing and teaching your child. That's so, ugh.
And all
Yeah,
along,
you
we knew
have
it
to
was,
physically watch your child. Yeah, but
yeah.
like,
And we know it was temporary. We just didn't think it would last as long as it lasted.
yeah,
We're just now getting out of it. But I mean, it could have been, we could not have vaccines. It could be longer. But I
yeah,
think the thing is like it was all temporary, and it's like we're here for you, but at the same time, that is your child.
And that's what I appreciated about your analogy. It's that the way that health is the responsibility of the parent, right? The health of your child is your responsibility. Now, as a parent, and part of that responsibility is knowing when to delegate some of that responsibility. So as a parent, you take your kid to the dentist, you take them to the doctor, right? The professional. And they give you instructions, they give you prescriptions, and ultimately it's up to you to make that happen. It's similar to education. It's like, it is your responsibility. And you delegate a lot of that to professionals. You bring them to school. You make that choice because you could really homeschool them. You bring them to us because we're professionals and you know that it is your right. It is their right to have that. But with that said, trust us when we tell you things. When we make recommendations, take that into account, right? Make that part of your day. And I think that's why you said that, you mentioned that analogy, and I was like, yes, paint the town with that analogy.
And who doesn't love a parachute? I mean, technically they save lives.
Yeah, that's a good point, though, about I think sometimes we do forget because that pre-pandemic life was a lot of busyness and a lot of not really reflecting on our own lives. And I feel a lot of parents forgot they were parents because they were working all of the time and the kids were in school. They had those couple of hours a day. And that's not how it works, like you were saying about taking care of the health. You're responsible for your child. And so I'm glad to see people took initiative and made these pods and things like that. But to say you want to take a salary away, it's kind of like, okay, you really just don't you don't want to be a parent. You don't want to raise your own kid. So now that we're back, like now that you're back in school, like what are some changes that you think are going to stay? How do you see school changing, or is it going to just go back to how it was? Like, what do you see coming up in September or August or whenever you start back next year?
My hope is that everyone just has a little more patience and understanding and empathy. To continue on with life, you need those things. I think it was the best way to be able to teach a kid because they learn the best way is like hands-on experience. And this was definitely an experience. And so I do hope that they build those skills through their life because they're very important. And just grace. I think Emma said that earlier, just some grace. We're all just doing the best that we can. And I realize that as adults too. Sometimes we take our own like health or mental health for granted. We're all just trying to survive too. Some of us are responsible for littles. And so you've got that added responsibility. But, every day is a new day and every day can also be a challenging day. And I think sometimes we just have to accept time, space, and energy and just keep moving on. And I also think love can get you through. That is one thing that I think is really important because I don't necessarily love my job, but I love my students.
Oh, wow. That sounds beautiful. I think on the bigger level, I think politically, I think parents are voters and they're going to do whatever makes them happy, despite it being actually best for their kids. But I think at the sort of micro level, I think we've all learned to adapt. So I think it comes September, despite whatever the larger forces decide to do, whether or not it's best for us, I think schools are going to scramble and do the best they can. I don't know. I just don't like that looks different everywhere.
yeah.
I wish that there was better leadership, and I don't even know. I can't even identify at what level that would need to exist at because I've never seen it exist before.
Isn't it the same president of the UFT that it was back in the day? Like, what? There are no term limits? What's going on?
Oh my God, I know. But here's the thing. It's like the UFT is going to ask for X, and then the Post is going to write a paper saying why it's horrible. And then it's going to cause like a double protest. It's going to be one group of parents saying, I want X, the other group saying, I want Y. And it's just divisive the way that our country has been for, within different topics, which is why I say I think that really the meat and potatoes comes from the individual school.
Yes.
Like they make it happen.
That's my dream. I want to start a school where it's mandatory yoga and meditation, and the kids like learn self-reflection and empathy and compassion and kindness, and it's just a loving environment. I need to start that.
What's horrible is that with experience, in order to do that, they would tell you need to open up a charter school. But then in good conscience, you're like, yeah, but I want a school where teachers have a union, right? Where they have the right of due process. And why can't both exist?
Yes, I remember back in the day, they used to have those rubber rooms, and it made so I can see why people don't want unions in some sense, because these teachers were not performing, and then they were just sat somewhere and still paid and still getting benefits and things like that. So it's just a system that is not working, and I don't know how to fix it. I wish I did. My pipe dream is to be some kind of lobbyist or for special education or something like that, but I wouldn't even know where to start.
I think we just started just in this podcast.
Yes.
There you go.
You put it out there. It's in the universe now. We doing it.
Yes, let's be the change. Any final thoughts?
Well, I would have to say I appreciate both of you taking a risk to talk to educators. Sometimes this is a moot point.
Oh no.
Well, people don't always want to hear about education, especially like these days. They're always like, we've heard enough about that in the pandemic. And so it's like, we didn't do a precast or anything. You didn't know what we were going to say. We could have said all kinds of things, but I think it's important that you even considered like education should be a topic, right? Like that's something
Absolutely.
in the world today. So thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate both of you. Appreciate your time. I appreciate what you're doing for these kids. We need more of you. And keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.